Hi, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf, and welcome to my podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, a podcast dedicated to helping you clean out toxic thinking with simple and scientific strategies. In today's podcast, I'm going to talk about an interesting question I was asked recently. Can you make yourself a more optimistic person? Can you build a reserve of happiness and peace to draw upon? The answer is that we literally come wired for optimism. We are wired for love. So let's talk about what this means. This is actually a topic I cover extensively in my new book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. Here it is. I'm so excited about this book, which is available now for pre-order and will be out March 2nd, 2021. When you pre-order, you get access to amazing bonus content like exclusive chapters on how to help your child detox their brain, access to an exclusive 3-week book club with me, and so much more. You can pre-order now on Amazon, Target, Books A Million, Barnes & Nobles, or just visit cleaningupyourmentalmess.com for more details and international buying options. That's cleaningupyourmentalmess.com. The link will also be in the show notes below. One more note before we begin. I'll be taking a 2-week break from podcasting over Christmas holidays to enjoy some time with my family and rest my brain so I can be back in action and ready for an amazing 2021, which we all are looking forward to. So if you need your weekly fix of my podcast, be sure to check out past episodes. There's over 230 wherever you listen to podcasts. And please consider subscribing and leaving a 5-star review. Now, on to today's episode. Let's talk about this concept of optimism bias in the brain. So, as I said, the question was, can you make yourself a more optimistic person? Can you build a reserve of happiness and peace to draw upon? And the answer is, you actually are an optimistic person. You may not feel it, but the way that your brain is wired, we talk about it being wired for love, and your mind has an optimism bias. So literally, our mind is how we think and feel and choose. So our mind is how we think, feel, and choose. And our mind has this optimism bias. It's literally designed for love. Our brain, if we look at neuroscience, we see that we actually don't have any circuitry for toxicity, negative thinking. We have circuitry for love, for positivity. So all of the circuitry in the brain is designed to work properly to our benefit, and negativity damages how our circuitry works. So we see that the design of the brain is for optimism. So we don't have circuits for negativity. We don't have structures in the brain for negativity. We don't have cells in the brain for negativity. Everything about how the brain works, from the structures to the cells, to inside the cells, to the neural wiring, to the neurochemicals, to the neurohormones, to the neuroimmune system, it's all designed for your survival. It's all designed for the positive side. So we call that an optimism bias. Now, the mind is separate from the brain. You've heard me say this a million times before if you've listened to me a lot. The mind and the brain are separate, but inseparable. So when we talk about the mind, we're talking about thinking, feeling, choosing, and we're talking about a quantum energy. So to understand the mind being wired for love, we can look at quantum physics. So quantum physics is often referred to as the theory of thought. And when you look at quantum physics and you get down to the sort of theory of quantum physics, we see that that literally our minds are waves of love. And they talk about it being waves of love because when our mind is operating in the best way possible, we see these waves of love in the brain. So you can see me now as a whole person. And if you went inside my head and my body, you'd see all the different parts. And if you go inside that, you'll see the cells, and you'll go inside the cells. And eventually you get to the level of the individual particles. And then when you look at particles, you get to waves. So when I talk about the mind generating waves of energy and love waves, that is the most fundamental part of you. So at your most fundamental level, you are basically waves of love. And when you translate them all back up into the physical and you get to the actual brain, so here is my model of the brain, we see from neuroscience that everything about the brain is designed for our survival. Everything about our mind is designed for our survival. The interaction between your mind moving through your brain and your brain responding is all about survival. So having an optimism bias is naturally the baseline design of the waves of your mind and the baseline design of your brain. So if that's the case, then we have to ask ourselves, why are we negative? Why do people get negative? Why do we get into states of negativity? Well, the reason being is that it is normal to look for optimism, to have this optimism bias. So when something's very negative or something very toxic happens in your environment or in your life or in what you're reading, it draws our attention not because we have a negativity bias, but because we have an optimism bias. So the toxicity goes against the natural wiring of the brain and the natural design of the mind. And so therefore, there's an imbalance created. So there's an imbalance in the mind when you read that toxic negative thing, or you think that negative thought, or you hear that negative statement, or someone speaks something negative to you, or you're immersed in some sort of negative environment. That does draw our attention, but not because we're drawn to the negativity because of the negativity itself. We are drawn to the negativity because it's warning us that that's not the normal situation. It throws our mind into an imbalance. It throws our brain into an imbalance. So for survival, we have to restore the balance in our mind and we have to restore the balance in the brain. So when you're thinking negatively, you actually throw the energy response in the brain into a negative state. So your brain, as I often tell you, is responding to your mind. So let's say you're thinking that very negative thought and you're thinking a lot about that negative thought and you're thinking for a long time about that negative thought. The waves of your brain become incoherent. So there's a lack of coherence. Coherence meaning balance. So your brain's got two sides. And what will happen when we think negative thoughts is that you will get an imbalance between the left side and the right side in the different waves of the brain. The different waves of the brain are delta, theta, alpha, beta, high beta, and gamma, and they all flow in a wave-like way, which I'll explain in a moment. But when we get very negative, we get an imbalance in the frontal lobe. We will get too much of one wave on the one side and too little on the other side, and it's not balanced. And as soon as there's an imbalance in the front part of the brain, it influences the wave energy through the rest of the brain. We want balance between the two sides of the brain. The optimism wiring or the wired for love nature of the brain is one of balance. So the negativity throws the balance out. So it's kind of like if you get a virus in your body, then your immune system will immediately send out cells to fight against that, like little soldiers to fight against that in different ways. It's like a whole army with different roles that then comes out to try and fight the virus. So when we're negative, our mind and our brain respond in this same way, that we actually go out to try and resolve this problem. There's an imbalance in the wave energy. There will be too much high beta, and high beta is really good for focus, but when you have too much of it for too long, you actually don't have good focus. You get the opposite happening. When you don't have the right amount of alpha, for example, if it drops too low, then you don't have very good insight. If you have too much gamma, then you're not being selective in your learning. You're just kind of absorbing all this information and you'll feel overwhelmed. So negativity does those kinds of things to your brain because it's not natural. So then we're drawn to that to fix it, because that's creating a problem with the neurochemicals, those brain waves that are now not functioning like they should, and out of the lack of coherence between the two sides of the brain, that causes a reaction that we got to fix this. So it sends us a warning signal, and that warning signal is this like level of discomfort that, something's not right. And that warning signal, when you feel that in your subconscious mind, when something starts moving into your conscious mind, where you get that feeling of something's not right, that's your mind and brain working together to tell you, hey, pay attention to that negative statement that you're making, or that negative thought that you're thinking, or that constant negative stuff that you're immersing yourself in, and that state of mind that you've now got in, and do something about it, because that's actually damaging the brain. It's upsetting the brain waves. It's upsetting the neurochemistry. It's upsetting the immune system. Your immune system functions dropping. You're going to cause inflammation in your brain, and inflammation isn't good for your brain. It isn't good for your body. You'll even affect the DNA in your brain, the cells of your brain and the cells of your body, and we find that your cellular health is not so good. And that can happen. The more negative you become, the more that happens, the worse it actually gets. But once you start managing the negativity, and I'm going to talk about how to do that in a moment, then you can reverse that process. This is the beauty of a neuroplastic brain. As we use our mind to manage our mind and get our mind under control, then what that happens is that we send a different kind of wave energy through the brain. Those love waves from our mind moves through our brain and help to restore balance in the brain and help to then lower the cortisol and lower the homocysteine and lower the inflammation and help boost the immune system and start getting the flow of chemicals, and all that then translates into your mind into clearer thinking and more integrated thinking and so on and so on. And that can happen really fast. The way that you deal with a negative thought has an immediate impact on the way that your brain and body are functioning. So the way you use your mind really does change your brain and body in an instant. And obviously it takes a bit of time if you've got into the habit of thinking negatively, and if it's a pattern that you've developed, if you've practiced being negative, whatever you think about the most will grow. So if you just constantly always first thing see a bunch of negative and just find yourself going down this negative rabbit hole, if that's the pattern you've created, you've actually wired a toxic neural network into your brain. That is a viewpoint that you have of life. So here's this toxic neural network. Let's show you this. And that's how if you have this negative mindset about everything, then as something happens, this is how you view it. So instead of seeing the cup half full, we're seeing it half empty. You're seeing, oh my gosh, this and this and this and this and this, and you immediately lapse into the negative. Now, if you've been doing that for longer than 9 weeks, 63 days, that's become a very powerful network in your brain. It's toxic, so it's actually causing brain damage. It's doing that whole inflammation thing that I described a moment ago, and it's not good for you. And your body, your whole immune system is rejecting this. As much as your immune system will fight against a virus, your immune system will fight against this. So negative thinking is creating this, and your natural positivity, optimism bias is trying to deal with this. So you get this kind of war going on. So when you have mind management, you can then tune in and listen. Okay, I've got the sense of these signals are coming up. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I know there's something that I'm doing that's like making me feel uncomfortable. And you start paying attention and you start seeing, oh, actually, I keep seeing everything in a very negative sense. And I'm catastrophizing and I'm overgeneralizing and I'm ruminating. And now you know that what you think about the most is growing. You're growing this thing. And not only is this thing causing this tremendous imbalance in the brain and all those chemical things going wrong and this toxic wiring and proteins folded wrong, but in your mind, you've got this ball of energy that's now toxic. And imagine this ball of vibrating, fiery energy that is creating tremendous imbalance inside of your brain. Kind of think maybe of sparkling water and how the little bubbles are, the water's all calm, and then it becomes, you put that in that little machine and then you shoot in all these bubbles and then it's all sparkly. That is kind of what we're doing with our brain. We're creating these balls of energy. There's this buzzing that works against the positivity bias of the mind. So then the mind wants to expel those balls of energy and it sends that up as a message to your subconscious. So you've got your brain sending messages back to your brain and to your body physically, and then you've got your mind sending these mind messages. So that draws us to that negative thing to fix it. So we have a positivity bias. And the more we recognize that, the more we can train ourselves through mind management to actually catch ourselves in these negative mindsets and actually evaluate them. Okay, so let's say that this is you, or not all the time, but maybe just now and then, but more now than then, or maybe it's all the time. What we have to do is we have to weaken that power balance. We have to shift the power balance and we have to weaken the energy that you've given this toxic tree. When you have a habit that's formed in you, it means that you've built a very strong neural network. I call them trees, and you've given it lots of energy. Because the more you think about it, the more energy you are giving it, like you water a plant and it grows. So what we want to do is take away that energy. And energy is never lost. It's always transferred. So we want to take away the energy from that toxic mode or mindset of thinking that's driving you, that thought you built, and we want to build a positive mindset. So instead of we do this shift. Now listen very carefully. We do this shift. We shift from seeing that toxic negative thing as something that's scary and we must just push it down and suppress it and I mustn't be negative. The more you tell yourself to not be negative, you've done it before, I'm sure, the more negative you get. It's called the white bear effect. If you tell someone not to think of a white bear or not to think of a pink elephant or whatever, that's what they're going to think about. So if you tell yourself, I mustn't be negative, you're just going to increase your negativity. So what do you do instead? You don't look at the negativity as something fearful, and I might have made you fearful now when you heard of all those things that can go wrong. That knowledge is for you to know that what it does in your brain, but here I'm going to give you the solution. You embrace that negativity. Like we embrace means bring it into your fold, okay? When something's in your fold, you control it. It doesn't control you. So if you just try and not think about it by trying to shove that down, I can guarantee it's got stronger and you're actually going to be more negative. And you're using a positive affirmation like a Band-Aid. It's not going to help the solution. You can't whack a Band-Aid on something that is a festering wound. It needs to be treated. Okay, so we need to treat this thing. So we embrace it. When we embrace it, we bring it up. It comes into our fold and we embrace it with the attitude of, okay, I am being negative. I'm constantly being negative. I'm always seeing the negative side. I'm just like seeing 5,000 negative things. I just look into the future that, oh, this means this and this and this and this and this. You embrace it. You embrace that and you acknowledge that. So by acknowledging that you're negative and you do this and describe it, describe what you do. As soon as you do that, you've brought this into the conscious mind. You've made it really weak. And when it's weak, it means you can change it. When it's weak, you've shifted the power balance. Now you are using your mind to change your brain. You have captured this thought, this negative mindset that's pervading, because it's very pervasive. Negativity is one of those very pervasive things that can influence everything. Okay. So by embracing it, you are looking for the message behind why you're negative. And as soon as you are aware of it, awareness makes it malleable or changeable. So now you've shifted the power balance to where you are controlling and you are not being controlled. And as soon as you do that, you can now start looking at what all the negative behaviors are, all the negative warning signals, your perspective, which is the tree trunk, which is like you're negative about everything. You write this all down and you can look at the roots, which is why are you negative? Why did you get into this constant negative mindset? It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take you 63 days. Take 63 days to find a toxic thought, find it, bring it up, find all the behavior, the branches, find the perspective, find the roots, and reconceptualize it into a healthy way of thinking. So what happens then after 63 days is you've turned it into a habit. It doesn't take 21 days to form a habit, it takes 63. And then what happens is when you're living with this mindset, when the negativity tendency pops up, you know what to do with it. You know, okay, that's a negative attitude. How can I turn this into something positive? Now, that's done through 5 steps over 63 days. And in my new book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, I tell you exactly how to do this. In the first part of this book, I tell you what we're doing, what mind management is. This is all mind management, what we're doing wrong, how it affects our brain and our body. So there's my summaries of my clinical trials. And in the second half of the book, I give you so many practical applications of how to embrace, process and reconceptualize through my 5 simple and scientifically proven steps. Everything I teach you is based on 38 years of scientific research. I've just done more clinical trials recently. All of those results are in this book and you can pre-order this book. And when you pre-order, there's a whole bunch of bonuses. As I mentioned, like a book club and a chapter for helping your kids and amazing stuff. This is a lifesaver. Millions of people have been exposed to my concepts and I've taken the best of my work and made it as simple as possible and put it into this book. So there you can find out exactly how to do that to help you. Okay, so negativity is not something that is natural. It's actually completely unnatural. And so that's why we're drawn to fix it. So that's in summary of what I've been saying. So we have a positivity bias. And when we're drawn to the negative, we are actually the reason we're drawn is not because we're drawn because we like it. We're drawn to it because we naturally recognize for survival, we have to change it. So then we're going to make negativity work for us and not against us. Because sometimes that in that negativity, there is some sort of a message or a warning signal or something you need to know or that you're not paying attention to. So when you embrace it, process it and reconceptualize it, you can change it, which is amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to give you one more tip to help you. Basically, I've given you all these analogies like this tree and this tree. You've seen all these little props and things. So when you find yourself in a negative state, visualize maybe these trees that I've shown you. Visualize that toxic tree. Visualize this model of the brain. Visualize everything going haywire. Visualize these waves across your brain flowing like a tsunami instead of think of the waves in the sea where they go from really huge waves far out in the sea and then they get a little bit smaller, and then they're not as deep and big, and then they get to the point where they grow into this crest, and then the crest crashes on the beach, and then you have little waves on the beach, and then it sucks back in and it repeats it. That cycle is what the positivity bias creates in the brain, this constant cycling. But when we are negative, then that becomes like this wave that gets huge and dumps you. I don't know if you've ever been dumped by a wave. I have. And you get thrown all over and you got sand in your mouth. And that's kind of what we're doing when we constantly act in a negative way. So visualize these things that I've been telling you. Think back of these things, because when you visualize, you're actually creating a network in your brain that's going to help you self-regulate. And self-regulation is key to mind management. Key to mind management. So when you get this book, and you should pre-order this now, you basically cleaning up your mental mess is I tell you how to clean up your mental mess through this book, through teaching you about mind management. And today I've told you specifically how to apply it to literally building a positive network, or taking advantage of the positivity network in our brain. It's so easy to get drawn into the negative, not because we like the negative, but because you're trying to fix it. But if you stay there, whatever you think about the most will grow. So that's called the plastic paradox. So we designed to build this, but if we build this, if that's what we focus on, that's what we build, and that's causing all that damage. So you can capture that and you can change that. That is the power that you have inside of you. So you can make negativity, so in sum, you can make negativity and challenges work for you and not against you. You take control. You shift the power balance. But in that way, you change the energy flow, and all the other positive effects happen. You'll lower the cortisol, you'll lower the hormone homocysteine, you'll wire out the toxic bad folded proteins, you bring balance back in the brain, you improve your immune function, you'll think more clearly with less brain fog, more clarity, more insight, increase your intelligence, so you'll handle situations so much better. And this will carry over when you get into this kind of self-regulatory mode of mind management. This will then carry over into other areas of your life. So in conclusion, you can go for 3 days without food. You can go for 3 days without water. You can go for 3 minutes without oxygen, but you cannot even go 3 seconds without thinking. So here's my challenge to you. How are you thinking? What is your mind like? Is it a mental mess? Do you need to clean up your mental mess? Have you shifted into a negative mindset? Well, you can control that because you're wired for love and you're wired for positivity. Go get this book, pre-order it. It's really going to help you. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and I hope you'll really recognize the power that you have in you. You're wired for love. You are not wired for fear. Thank you for joining me today.